So we got a pretty major update for Diablo IV this past week. During the Xbox Bethesda event, they revealed a brand new class, the Necromancer, along with releasing a 5-minute gameplay showcase, giving us a sneak peek at the game's development progress, various features, and future plans. And man, should I say, it looks fantastic. Gameplay and visuals have come a long way since the initial reveal in 2019. Everything looks super smooth, high fidelity. I love the more grim, dark tone of the world. And there's a real nice variety of landscapes and environments that they showed as well. But not only do the gameplay and visuals look really sharp, but they touched on some really cool features. A full open world where we can explore as we please, riding between different biomes on our mounts, taking on camps of enemies, clearing strongholds that will turn into towns or dungeons, completing side quests and local events. There are massive world boss fights, and diving into any of the over 150 different dungeons, all the while hunting for loot. There's also a non-linear story that we can approach in whatever order we want. I am kind of curious how that's going to work for narrative consistency, but I'm sure they'll figure something out. Also, story kind of minimal importance to me in a loot-driven ARPG. There is a full free-for-all PvP zones in the game where you'll battle other players for rewards. There's even this champion system where the best players will get marked on the map as high-value targets. Tons of character customization, and an end game that they say will be rich with activities and things to do for long-term progression. While most of this wasn't new information, it was great to get an update and see the progress that they've made in the past few years. In fact, my immediate instinct was to be super hyped. Of course, I mean, why not? This looks great. Everything they're showing here looks fantastic. Diablo IV seems to be making big strides in a positive direction. The game feels a lot more modern with many of the features that they're adding. Personally, I love the more MMO-like direction they're taking, bumping into other players in the world, having full PvP zones, world bosses, dynamic events and zones that change based on what you do. I mean, all of this sounds like a dream for someone like me. And again, the gameplay and the visuals, they look as good as ever. But try as I might, I just cannot muster any sincere enthusiasm for this game at this point. And not because I don't think Diablo IV looks good, not that I think it won't be a competent game that's fun to play, at least for a little while, but mostly because my expectations for anything from Blizzard at this point are just at rock bottom. Like, I don't expect anything from the company. And why is that? Well, I don't know. Let's just start with Diablo Immortal. I mean, what else can be said about this game that hasn't already been covered in extensive detail? Multiple in-game currencies you can purchase with real money to buy cosmetics and crafting materials, a season pass with multiple tiers of paid tracks, the Boon of Plenty service that grants you 30 days of bonus login rewards and other conveniences, the option after completing in-game activities like completing a dungeon to spend money to drastically increase your rewards, and then finally, of course, the legendary gem system that without paying is pretty much impossible to fully cap out, barring, I don't know, 10 straight years of grinding. This is hands down the most predatory, manipulative, pay-to-win game Blizzard has ever released. And also, it's likely to be one of the company's most financially successful games ever. And therein lies pretty much the entire problem. Despite all the backlash, all of the YouTube videos complaining, the extensive coverage of every method the game uses to get you spending, the Twitch streamers showcasing how absurd the amounts of money you can dump into the game is just after a couple of weeks, and then article after article rehashing all of this just with way more pop-up ads. I don't know, man. I mean, there's an argument that this is a free-to-play mobile game just doing what mobile games have always done, and it's gonna have no impact on future Blizzard titles. And I get that perspective, but also I'm pretty sure it's wrong, and that Diablo Immortal is just a sign of things to come and the direction they're trying to push their games in. Mobile game monetization has slowly been creeping its way into the PC and console space, and now that Blizzard is getting a taste of just how much money these can rake in, with individual players spending tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that genie is not going back in the bottle. After all, why would you stick to the shrinking portion of this pie chart here? I think there's a fair concern that they are going to push their games more towards a direction like this and monetizing many more aspects of it beyond the base price, beyond subscriptions, beyond even loot boxes, which are the kinds of things Blizzard have done with their games in the past. Now enter Diablo IV. As great as this game seems, as fantastic as that trailer was, and everything we know about the game so far, let's take a look at their monetization plans. So we know for certain that it will be a full box price game. So that's going to be $60 to start, or maybe even $70. Who knows? A lot of AAA games have been pushing for this pricing recently. On top of that, we also know they intend to develop and sell expansions. These we can expect will be probably $40 to $50. We also learned at BlizzCon shortly after Diablo 4's reveal that they would have an in-game cash shop with microtransactions.
How are you planning to monetize it and keep getting funding, I guess, to keep making heaps of content?
So Diablo 4 will be available as a base game, and as I said, we're going to have expansions. You also will be able to acquire cosmetics in the game through...
So MTX? Oh wow, that's going to be through some sort of shop, or can...
It's very early.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
But yes.
At the time, they were pretty vague on exactly what would be in that shop, likely because they didn't know. I'm sure they had some ideas, but hadn't fully committed to anything as of that time. Well, recently we got some further clarification, which people have assured me is saying that it will just be cosmetics for sale. Let's take a look at what exactly was said. So Rod Ferguson, the GM of the Diablo franchise, said in a tweet, "To be clear, Diablo 4 is a full-price game built for PC, PS, and Xbox audiences. We are committed to delivering an incredible breadth of content after launch for years to come, anchored around optional cosmetic items and full story-driven expansions." Then Adam Fletcher, Blizzard's global community lead, said in a tweet, "Diablo 4 is coming out as a full-price game built strictly for PC and console audiences. The game is huge and there will be tons of content after launch for all players. Paid content is built around optional cosmetic items and eventually full expansions." Now, what I notice about these two statements, other than them being basically the exact same thing, just with slightly different words, is that neither one actually says it's only cosmetics they will be selling in the shop. The first tweet said that the game is anchored around optional cosmetics, and the second tweet said it's built around optional cosmetics. At no point have they explicitly said cosmetics are the only thing that will be for sale in the cash shop, because almost certainly they are not the only thing that will be for sale in the cash shop. I want to point you to a recent Blizzard career listing over on their website where they were looking for someone to fill the role of Diablo 4's product manager. In the job description, they said Blizzard is looking for a passionate, organized, and driven individual to manage the Diablo 4 in-game shop experience. This role will be a key member of the Diablo 4 commercial team. The ideal candidate will combine their experience working in a live service gaming environment with meticulous attention to detail, strong interpersonal communication skills, and passion to delight our players. Yes, because nothing says delight for me personally than a game's cash shop. Anyways, some of the position's key responsibilities are said to include manage the virtual product offers of the Diablo 4 in-game storefront throughout each season to deliver an exceptional player experience. They touching on the fact that there will be seasons of some sort in this game and that those seasons will be tied directly into the cash shop. It's also said they will utilize internal tools to configure product contents, pricing, and availability, organize and maintain an ever-growing catalog of virtual products. It doesn't just say cosmetics, it says virtual products. Work with the analytics team to help identify sales trends and quantify purchase behaviors. God, it just sounds so gross, doesn't it? And a handful of other things, all focused on the publishing, selling, and making sure that the shop is fully utilized. And the final bullet point here says the ideal candidate should have a passion for video games, although I suspect they are willing to let that one slide if someone doesn't meet the criteria. Now, this listing has since been removed, as apparently they have filled the role. I guess congrats to whoever that is. I sure hope you can fill us players with delight with all of the wonderful items you throw in the cash shop. I'm so excited. Now, I think the other thing to consider here is that even if Blizzard comes out and says, okay, it's got a box price, we'll sell expansions, and the cash shop will only have cosmetics, even if they said that, I'm kind of hard pressed to believe them. Just remember that not too long ago, game director Wyatt Chen said, you can't buy gear that will make you stronger in Diablo Immortal. But as it turns out, he said that because he doesn't consider gems gear, which, as we of course now know, gems, which you can can buy are in fact the main form of gear progression in this game. So no, you cannot technically buy a chest piece or a helm. You can't buy that gear, but you can buy the gems that give that gear and your character the most of its strength. Like this is how you progress. It's like, come on, man. At this point, I'm just not convinced that them using the phrases built around and anchored around when describing the cosmetics that will be available for sale in Diablo 4 is anything but an attempt to avoid explicitly saying that the shop will only sell cosmetics. All of that said, I don't think that Diablo 4 is going to monetize and have a system even remotely identical to what Diablo Immortal is using. I don't think they're going to push that level of mobile monetization into D4. But I do think, on the other hand, that they've kept a real close eye on the likes of Lost Ark, for example, a similar top-down ARPG with MMO elements that they would probably happily try to push the line as far as they can reasonably get away with, selling not only cosmetics, but convenience features, monthly buffs, experience, crafting materials, so on and so on. But let's just say that they don't go that far. And honestly, I don't expect them to. I don't think the monetization in D4 is going to be like Immortal. I don't even think it's going to be like Lost Ark. I think what's much more likely is that they emulate a model like what Path of Exile uses, which to my eye is largely considered to be a relatively fair method of monetization. Now, of course, the main difference here is that Path of Exile is a free-to-play game and Diablo 4 is not. Diablo 4, though, will most certainly be double and triple dipping in a lot of ways. If you ask me, in fact, right now, exactly what I suspect Diablo 4's monetization will look like, I'd say it's going to be this. We'll have the base box price of $60 to $70. We'll get expansions every 2 to 3 years at $40 to $50. And then the cash shop, which will absolutely include cosmetics, will almost certainly include pets and mounts. If not mounts, they will sell mount cosmetics, absolutely. And there's probably going to be some convenience features. Not all, but some. Experience boosts, potions that increase your drop rate percentage of getting high tier gear, inventory expansion, character slot expansion. Some of those elements I really am sure will be in this cash shop. And then I also think that there's a decent chance they have something resembling a battle pass system in the game as well. Now, the hope, of course, is that if this all turns out to be true, and even if it doesn't, with the box price, with paid expansions, and then whatever ends up being in the cash shop, however that's configured, whatever is included, cosmetics plus, you know, the hope is that they take all of this money, all of their earnings, and they funnel it back into the game to continue development and add more content. Well, how has Blizzard's track record with this been? Honestly, not especially great. Diablo 3, for example, has had relatively few updates over these past 10 years. Specifically, post Reaper of Souls, there really haven't been any major changes. If you played the game back in 2014, 2015, barring a handful of things, you've pretty much seen it all. But Force, you say, they don't sell microtransactions in Diablo 3. Okay, yeah, you're right. And maybe that's the reason there haven't been many updates, sure. But they did sell the base game, which, may I add, is one of the top 20 best-selling video games of all time. And then on top of that, they sold an expansion. Presumably, they could have developed and continued to sell other expansions, or at least made any big significant changes. And when compared to its contemporaries, like Path of Exile, for example, Diablo 3 looks like an abandoned game from a small indie team with how sparingly they have had any updates. It does not look like one of the top 20 best-selling games of all time, which it is. But you know what? You're right. D3 doesn't have a cash shop that they sell microtransactions, so that they just couldn't afford any more updates. They couldn't do it. All right, fine. Let's take a look at some other games. How about Overwatch? Now, certainly Overwatch wasn't the first game to do this, but it is often cited as the game that helped normalize loot boxes. So on top of their base game sales, they just have been raking in cash selling boxes with a random chance of unlocking cosmetics in them. And I should know, in my time with the game, I easily spent hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars on those loot boxes, which at this point, I absolutely regret. Not a mistake I'm going to make again in my gaming future. All of that money, well invested, right? They put it all back into the game and added a ton of content. Well, you know, the first few years, things were pretty decent. The game got around 10 new heroes, a bunch of maps, and new game modes. But then, around 2019, things really started slowing down. The last new hero was released in April 2020, and the game has basically been in a content drought for the years since. In fact, I was told they even removed a couple of maps from the game for the sake of of redesigning them that just never got added back in. Now, they've been working on the Overwatch sequel, so I guess if anything, that is the justification for them not having many updates the past 2 years. But as many other people have made note of, on the surface at least, Overwatch 2 hardly feels like more than an update. I mean, yes, they are changing plenty of things, but also staying the same in a lot of ways, with much of the same roster of heroes, mostly the same abilities, and many of the same maps. But I'm not really here to argue for the sake of Overwatch 2 and whether it's worthy of being deemed of a sequel. Just looking through their library of games, you will see similar complaints about lack of content and updates in many Blizzard titles. Heroes of the Storm has been on life support for many years now. StarCraft basically might as well be on life support as well. World of Warcraft, while it does get an expansion every couple of years, it has content that runs dry pretty quickly for most players, with huge swaths of time between updates. That has been a regular complaint over these past several years. The point is, even with in-game cash shops, even with subscription fees, even with the box prices, and plenty of other means of spending money, Blizzard's track record of long-term support has not been the greatest for their games. And given that that's a bulk of the justification being used for adding a cash shop into their next mainline Diablo title, I am not instilled with much confidence that they are exactly going to deliver. But let's just for a moment put all of that aside. Let's put aside the precedent that's been set for how far they've pushed monetization in Diablo Immortal, what they've said and haven't said about their full monetization plans for Diablo IV, and of course their track record of supporting and updating games with the money that they do make from box sales, subscriptions, cash shops, and loot boxes, and how in a lot of ways it's left a lot to be desired. Putting even all of that aside, I think there's still serious questions about just the longevity that they will deliver in Diablo IV. If you directly compare Diablo 3 to titles like Path of Exile or Lost Ark, it looks like a skeleton of a game. Like, those titles are so rich in the amount and the variety of content that they have. Running bounties and rifts in Diablo 3 looks like a complete joke by comparison. And I love playing Diablo 3, like the physical act of playing. It is really satisfying. It's got crunchy, impactful combat. It feels great. But man, every time I jump back into a new season, which I've done for the past 5 or 6 seasons straight, it lasts like 2 days before it gets boring again. Making a character, leveling and gearing them up, getting a build going, all of that feels great. But once I'm on the process of farming rifts and leveling up my gems, it's like I've been doing the same thing for 8 years straight, but I keep coming back because it feels so good. But that coming back only lasts a very, very brief amount of time. So I really hope that they are able to deliver more and better content long term in Diablo 4. Again, that is the entire justification for having a cash shop in the first place. Please look at Path of Exile, look at Lost Ark, copy some of their systems entirely for all I care. Just add more things to do, because I expect playing Diablo 4 will be just as satisfying as playing Diablo 3. We just need some more content and more variety. Okay, so to wrap this all up, I have to say Diablo 4 looks fantastic. I'll say it again, I am right there with everyone else who's excited about the game from what they've shown. And I want this to be a great game. I want it to be a game I love playing, that's full of content, and that keeps me entertained for a very long time. And I would happily pay more than $60 over the long term for that experience. But at the same time, I just don't trust Blizzard. No, actually, I wouldn't say trust is the thing that I'm lacking, because Blizzard isn't like a close friend who betrayed me. They're just a company that's been severely disappointing over these past handful of years. I think a better way to phrase it is I no longer have any expectations of Blizzard. For the longest time, I held them in the highest esteem. They were one of the few companies in this industry that I felt always delivered a great gaming experience. And that expectation is just gone. And the recent release of Diablo Immortal really drove that home for me. Look, Blizzard, you guys hold some of the most beloved franchises in all of gaming. Diablo, Warcraft, StarCraft, these are each like literal pillars of their respective genres. They built them. They are the foundation of so many games that came after them. But at the same time, you've just completely squandered any and all goodwill that people had for your company and the games that you make, especially with this Diablo Immortal mess. I just cannot believe how far-reaching they went with that game. My hope for Diablo 4 and the rest of these franchises that they own that I love is that Blizzard can treat them and treat us just a little bit better better. Make good games that are fun to play with plenty of content, and we will buy them, I promise. But if you keep going down this path of like hyper exploitative, manipulative monetization straight out of the Let's Go Whaling playbook, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you'll probably still end up selling plenty and making lots of money, and you know, maybe that's all you care about, but I just feel like Blizzard is just starting from scratch with every new release. Like, they have to regain their any level of respect when as a company. Frankly, that is where I'm at right now. I hope Diablo 4 is good. I hope it's fairly monetized, and I hope it has a solid amount of variety and stuff at launch and post-launch as well. But yeah, my expectations are just really, really low. That's it. That's all it comes down to. That's going to do it for this video, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. It was a fun one. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.